Well, this is extraordinary because we now know that the Prime Minister has misled the House of Commons. We know he's lied repeatedly. We're in a situation where the Metropolitan Police are looking at events over multi-periods, multi-parties, perhaps as many as 4 that the Prime Minister had been at. People are outraged by a Prime Minister that simply won't accept responsibility. There has to be dignity in public life. I followed the previous Prime Minister, Theresa May, yesterday, and I had many disagreements with Theresa, but I respected her for her integrity, her honesty, and the recognition of the office that she held. This is a Prime Minister that's demeaned the office, and he should have been gone by now.
Well, you must hold the Metropolitan Police in the same high level as you do the former Prime Minister, so why not just let them get on with their work?
Because at the end of the day, we now have enough evidence. We know... What we do insofar as the Sugre report, I mean, it's not as we would have liked. We want to see the full report. It's important that we get that. But the Sugre report points out there were failures of leadership, that events took place. There were events across 12 dates, as many as 16 parties that took place. The Prime Minister has admitted at being at these events, and the public, rightly, are outraged. So many people that sacrificed so much that simply can't accept that the Prime Minister had this culture of partying where they were not able to grieve for their dying relatives.
He was inadvertently at these parties, these events.
It just happened to have the fact that parties were taking place in the Downing Street flat. But, you know, other things have come out over the course of the last few days, Kay. The fact that we know that security briefings, highly sensitive security briefings, have been left lying around the Downing Street flat, left lying around Chequers. The fact that people could come and go.
That's hearsay.
It's been reported, and we now know that he doesn't take these sensitive papers in his red box into his accommodation. This is a Prime Minister doesn't...
Hearsay.
Well, no, we now know that this Prime Minister doesn't recognise the gravity of his actions, the significance of his actions. This man is a threat to national security. But what we do know is that the government's
been... It's a wild accusation.
Well, the government's been found guilty of in court of illegal COVID contracts. We know that this man illegally shut down...
Different.
Well, but it's about the behaviour of a Prime Minister that is cavalier in his approach, that treats Downing Street and government as a personal plaything. He thinks he can get away with it. And it's important that Conservative MPs use their power to say enough is enough, that this man should be gone.
Sue Gray has felt that it's important enough for at least 12 events to be looked at by the police, and she's given them a wealth of evidence, 500 pieces of paper, 300 photographs. As I said, Dominic Raab, who takes 300 photographs at work events, I don't know, but obviously somebody does. Why not just wait for that?
Because the man is a distraction. He was supposed to have a conversation yesterday with President Putin, but what he's doing is he's spending time in meetings in Downing Street trying to get Tory MPs from coming back from the cliff edge of putting in motions of no confidence in him. We face a mountain of challenges, the situation with Ukraine and Russia, the cost of living crisis, and all that we're talking about is a Prime Minister that simply cannot behave, cannot show that he has what it takes to give leadership at a time of crisis, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the cost of living crisis, whether it's the security situation. He needs to recognise he is a problem.
And it's up to them, not you.
Well, they will, in the end, recognise that his time will be up. This Prime Minister will not go into the next election, and I think people want to see change. And I suppose, as an SNP MP, as the SNP leader at Westminster, I'm lucky that we have a choice in Scotland. We will be having an independence referendum. We can find a way from the sleaze and corruption that we see at Westminster. But this is a man that's tainted our democracy.
Independence referendums are for another day. We're not talking about those today. We're talking about what happened in the House yesterday. You actually left rather than be thrown out.
Yeah, I did. I certainly didn't want to cause a problem for the Speaker, but I must say I have a responsibility to stand up and speak truth to power. I did have an opposition day a couple of months ago where it was agreed in the context of that I could lay out the charge sheet against the Prime Minister about someone that has told lies, someone that has broken the ministerial code. So there's precedent for me doing what I did. And I think my constituents and my colleagues would expect me to stand up and say, this man has behaved in a way which is unacceptable.
But you're not saying you know the rules better than the Speaker, are you? Of course. And so the Speaker asked you to retract it and you chose not to. What do you say to people who say you detracted from events of the day by a bit of theatre?
No, because what I'm doing is I'm shining a light on the behaviour of the Prime Minister that should have resigned on the basis that he's misled the House of Commons. He came to the House of Commons on the 8th of December and said that no parties had taken place. He knew that he'd been at parties. He told Labour MP Catherine West that no event had taken place.
He says he didn't know there were parties.
Well, I mean, he has now subsequently admitted that he was at these parties.
No, he said
And
it was at events that he didn't know there were parties.
I think that the world knows that there were parties. If there was drink being taken, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. These were parties. We know it. The Prime Minister knows it, and he needs to accept responsibility.
And we can wait until the police tell us whether it's a duck or not.
I think we all...
In the meantime, what happens to you now? Because you left the chamber. Are you allowed back in?
Yes, I was back in the chamber last night. I've met with the Speaker. I have every regard for the Speaker and the role that he has to do. And of course, he has to discharge his obligations as Speaker in the House. I have an obligation to make sure that I'm standing up for my constituents and standing up for those that have made enormous sacrifices. And yes, it is the case that I need to stand by the remarks that I made, that this Prime Minister seems to be a stranger to the truth and a Prime Minister that has misled the House of Commons.
Is that the end of the matter, or do you?
Well, that's up to. I trust.
To apologise to the Prime Minister.
I don't have anything to apologise to. It's the Prime Minister that needs to accept his responsibilities and resign. I'll do my job of making sure that I'm holding this Prime Minister to account.
I mean, it's not waving the mace above your head as Michael Heseltine has done previously, but nevertheless, you know, you did leave before you were thrown out, so there must be some repercussions for that.
Well, look, that is up for others, but I think the public will judge, and I know that from the public reaction that we've had over the last 24 hours, that people have said, thank goodness, someone has been able to stand up in the House of Commons and tell it as it is. I have that duty and that obligation to make sure...
Do you regret leaving the House?
I want to be in the House of Commons doing my job. That's what I've been sent to do. But the House of Commons has to come into the 21st century. And when you've got a Prime Minister that is behaving as he has done, a Prime Minister that's been investigated by the police, I do have that responsibility to stand up to shine a light on his behaviour.
And do you regret leaving the House of Commons yesterday?
I did that because under the circumstances that was the right thing to do. But at the end of the day, I've been sent to Westminster to stand up for our constituents, to lead the SNP at Westminster. I have to call out the Prime Minister for the charlatan that he is.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.